Good morning or afternoon or evening. I'm Dr. John Demartini. This is my weekly presentation on various topics associated with mastering life and living a more fulfilled life. Today I'm going to talk about your core values and also how they play a role in fear and how to breaking through those fears that we might associate and in helping us empower the areas of our life, the primary areas, which I'll outline. So for many years, I've been studying human values. And when most people think of human values, many times they jump to the conclusion that that's all about morals and ethics. And there's no doubt that morals and ethics are derived from the study of values, which the formal study is called axiology. So if you want to go and play with that word with your friends, that's great. But it's a study of value and worth, a human value and worth, what you evaluate and what you value and what it's worth to you. So it's an economic as well as spiritual area of study. And there has been a term called the core and the crusted values, the core and crusted values. But when I went and studied values, and I think I've read over 400 books on this topic, and the literature is quite spread, and it's to be expected because there's different levels of conscious awareness, and each of the writers have different levels of awareness. And the lowest level of awareness is highly polarized, absolutist construct of values. And the ones that are more broader in minded and more aware, in my opinion anyway, is somebody who has a more universal relativistic construct of values. Montaigne, who is a French philosopher, traveled around the world and tried to find a universally ascended value system and was unable to find it. And studying values in McIntyre's work, you'll see that it's basically something that a bunch of idealists that come up with an idea how we're supposed to be, but nobody lives by it. It's like you're supposed to be nice, never mean, kind, never cruel, but then that's not real. You have times when you're mean and you're cruel at times. And so I'm not interested in moral hypocrisies to base my life on. And I don't want to teach you that because it's something you can't obtain and it will be self-depreciative. But I'm interested in looking at how values work in the brain and elaborate on that. So if you've got a pencil and paper, you might want to write some notes. I have a feeling there'll be something worth hearing. When people think of core values, they think of the primary things that they're really committed to. But when I actually go through and study core values in the literature, if you go online and just start looking up core values, you will discover absolutely social idealisms. Now, Kohlberg, who is a psychologist and studied the moral development of human beings, outlined a little stages of awareness and say this you may want to write. The first and lowest moral structure is avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. So if something pricks you or hurts you, whatever, and it's pain, you'll avoid it. And if something is pleasureful or tasty, sweet or something, you'll seek it. So bitter and pain you avoid, and sweet and pleasure you seek. This is our survival animal nature. Literally, single-celled organisms will avoid toxins and seek tonins, avoid pain, seek pleasure, avoid bitter, seek sweet. In fact, our first differentiation of a food versus something you don't eat was alkaloids were things you avoided and sweets and sugars you ate. So mankind, human beings out in original nature, learned to avoid pain and seek pleasure or avoid bitter, seek sweet, this kind of thing. So our most primitive form of moral structures is avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. Then Kohlberg says, then we learn, and that, by the way, that occurs in children from about 0 to 1 years of age. And if you notice as a parent, you can allow your child to do just about anything the first year until it walks. You know, it can pee and poo and you know, vomit and do everything, and you just kind of deal with it and just giggle it a lot, laugh it off sometimes. It's a little embarrassing and stuff and aggravating, but you don't really have a judgment on the child that first year. And during that time, it learns to avoid and seek according to pain and pleasure and sweet and bitter. But when you hit around 1 year of age and the child starts to stand up, all of a sudden, mommy usually comes in and says, no, no, yes, no, starts putting in these rules to make her have sanity. And for the sake of socialization, that's what it's called, but it's really based on the projection of the values of the parent onto the child, on what supports and challenges the parents. But Kohlberg says that there's a second stage after pain and pleasure, and that is the you might say the subordination to individual authority. The subordination to individual authority. It starts with mothers, then fathers, then preachers, then teachers. And preachers could be any form of spiritual instructor. And as we go through that stage, that goes on to probably around 12, age 12, all the way through elementary, primary school. That evolves from mother first, because father doesn't really interact a lot at first, then father as it gets 3 or 4 years old. And then it starts to get to out of the breastfeeding and diaper phase as it goes to father and mother. And then it goes to preacher when they take them to some sort of religious instruction, and then teacher at school. And this becomes now they start to inculcate and inject some of the values of people they depend on. So they depend on mommy for sure. Without that, there's not much survival. They depend on daddy because he can, make a right and wrong for the family, his rules. And what it is you're now subordinating to a mother's value system that's been developed, or the father's value system which developed. And then you eventually go into a preacher, because then all of a sudden the mother and father are sitting there listening to a preacher and think, well, that's the values that you're doing. And it's an introduction to socialization. And then eventually teacher. And of course, when the teacher starts doing it, and hit up until about 12, you still depend completely on your parents. You haven't had your puberty yet. You haven't had your yearning for independence exactly yet. And so you subordinate in that. And Kohlberg calls that the second phase. He actually breaks it up into 7 or 4 phases, depending on how you look at it. But then the next phase was the subordination to collective authority. And this is when peer pressure hits. Around age 13, you get puberty, and you start having your friends becoming more important than your parents. And you start lying to them, and you start sneaking out, and you start doing stuff that teenagers do. Well, not all teenagers, but many teenagers do. And they're trying to find out where their independence is. They're not quite able to stand on their own 2 feet economically, so they got to go back and forth between fitting into society, the peer pressure, and also the family. And so they're kind of a transition there. And then it goes from this local community to the city, then the state, then the nation, and then the world. And they move up the dynamics until you're in your 40s. And then usually about the age that you reach when the people that you had subordinated to, you're now at the age of it, you finally have an identity crisis, a midlife identity crisis, because you're now at the age when your parents were. And you start to think, what's really important to me? What's really priority? And what's really my values? And it's a soul searching, introspective stage. And then Kohlberg says the 4th stage, so you had pain and pleasure, subordination to individual authority, subordination to collective authority, and then eventually transcendence. And transcendence is when you actually have the courage to be yourself, to question authority, to question conforming to whatever people are saying and expecting. And it's not easy. Most people don't make it ever into transcendence. They're stuck in the 3rd phase, sometimes stuck in the 1st, 2nd phase. Very few people make it. Less than 1% make it into the transcendental stage where they're actually autonomous. Why? Because we're frightened instinctively of being abandoned, abolished, removed from the group. And so we have to conform. So we have to dress a certain way, live a certain way, and fit into a certain thing. And we're afraid of being rejected. Fear of rejection is huge. And so as a result of it, we inculcate and inject the values of whoever we depend on, whoever we look up to, whoever we admire, whoever we subordinate to. Now, in the process of doing it, we found out that the second you subordinate to somebody and inject their values, you take those values and then you project those onto other people. And you're attempting to live in those values of other people, which you can't really do, but you think you're going to do. And then you tend to judge people when they remind you of when you're not. And so you're now judging people down below when they're not living up to the idealism that you're hypocritically attempting to live by. And so you hear from your grandma, be nice, don't be mean, be kind, don't be cruel, be positive, don't be negative, be generous, don't be stingy. And one-sided idealisms about how you're supposed to be. And then grandma actually beats the hell out of grandpa and gives him hell all the time and starts yelling and screaming at him sometimes. And you see these hypocrisies, these incongruencies, and it's confusing because this is what you think you're supposed to do. Anytime you hear yourself saying, I should, I ought to, I supposed to, I got to, I have to, I must, I need to, that's an imperative language of an injected value of some authority. And that's an idealism that not everybody lives by. In fact, no one lives by it, but you're supposed to live by it. And it's just assumed. It's like going into a corporation and assuming the corporation has a set of values that's put on a piece of paper, but then there's new CEOs and new executives and they all live with different values. And each individual has their own set of priorities and values in their own life, but they're supposed to fit into this little structure that says on this piece of paper. But rarely does that occur. I've gone into corporation. I've never seen anybody really follow that exactly. So that leads me to the first principle here, that what people are calling core values in most of the literature, and I'm going to say 90+%, 95% of the core values I see in all the literature, you go look up on the internet, you go start reading books on it and stuff, 95% of it is not your core values. It's the injected social idealisms and the collective assumptions and moral hypocrisies that people think you're supposed to live by. And so people say, well, my core values are peace and honesty and integrity and this and that. But then they're lying to themselves half the time. They're not living congruently with their own values. They're living by duty, fitting in and fearing rejection. And they're all over the place. And so I just want to make sure that when you read about core values, keep that in mind. Because there's a lot of social idealisms and you'll subordinate to that. You'll pick one out of the blue that's an arbitrary thing that you think, oh, that's the ideal I want to live by. But that has nothing to do with what's real for you. And I'm going to make sure I put that across there because I've been studying values for 43+ years now and doing valuations and value determinations and things for many, many years. And I can tell you right now with absolute certainty, I mean certainty, that the majority of people, when you ask them what their values are or what their core values are, it's not what they're living. And so I'm not interested in that. If you want to master your life and transcend, you have to be honest with yourself. Not that honesty is the value, but you have to be honest with yourself in the assessment of what's really priority to you, what's really important to you. If I look at it, I look at where do you feel, what you fill your space with, what do you spend your time with spontaneously, not because of duty, not because what you should do, not as something that needs external motivation. Anything that needs external motivation is not important to you. If you need to be reminded or motivated extrinsically to do what you think is important, it ain't important. I don't need to be reminded to do research and teaching. I do it every single day. But I would need to be reminded to cook and drive. But if I thought I should be doing that and I'm not doing it, I'd then beat myself up because I'm not being what I should be. And I find that this is what most people do. They write down a bunch of idealisms about how they think they should be. They write them down and call them core values. They don't live by them. They beat themselves up. They think they're not perfect yet. So nobody's perfect. So this kind of thinking is not what I'm going to promote. I don't teach that. It's not the truth about human behavior. You have a set of priorities, a set of values that is a culmination of all the judgments and misperceptions you've had in your life that are leaving you empty, that are you're striving to fulfill, to reintegrate. I always say that whatever's stored in your subconscious mind that are judgments that have been there for days, weeks, months, years, or decades are creating impulses and instincts and epigenetic effects on physiology to create habits and character and behavior and where you're headed in life. And your hierarchy of values is really a reflection of those voids, and the values are trying to fulfill those voids, those emptinesses. So when you look down on somebody and you're too proud to admit what you see in them is inside you, that is a disowned part. And when you're looking up to somebody and you're minimizing yourself and you're too humble to admit what you see in them is inside you, that's a disowned part. And those disowned parts are in a sense, deflections and non-ownership of what you see in the world around you. Instead of calling them heroes and villains, they're really parts of you that you've disowned. And those disownments, those emptinesses, those voids of honoring those within yourself is what makes you go and live out trying to fulfill that. That's why you'll automatically go in the direction that will fulfill those voids. Now, so I'm not interested in what a social idealism is. I'm interested in what your life demonstrates. Your life demonstrates your core values, your real core values, not what people talk about as core values, because I see a list. I saw a little thing online the other day where pick your core values. Well, that's crap. Excuse my expression, but that's just actually crap. You don't just artificially just decide, okay, I'm now going to do that. You won't do it. That's like artificially doing a New Year's resolution when it's not really congruent with your real values. And it's like picking something because it sounds cool because you're beating yourself up. Most people are beating themselves up because they're not living congruently and then expecting to set up an idealism to feel better about themselves because they're feeling self-shame. I'm interested in what your life demonstrates. That's why on my website, drdemartini.com, there's a determine your value exercise on there. It's free, it's complimentary. If you haven't done it, please do it. It's private. But answer it with integrity as best you can, the best you can. I mean, you're going to probably do it again. I tell people to do it again a week from now, a month from now, a quarter from now, and every quarter, and keep records of it, which the computer will do for you. It'll be private. You can look at it, but take the time to do it. Look at how you fill your space. Look at what you really spend your time on. Look at what really energizes you. Look at where you're really going with your money. Where's your money being spent? Look at where you're organized. Look at where you're really disciplined. Look at what you think about, visualize, and affirm inside yourself about how you really want your life that shows evidence of coming true. Evidence that's coming true, not fantasies, evidence. Look at what you want to converse with other people about and talk about most spontaneously. Look at what inspires you and brings tears to your eyes and people that do extraordinary things. And when you're doing something amazing, your tears of inspiration or guides. Look at what the key goals that you've had, the persistent goals you've had long-term that are coming true. And look exactly what it is that you can't wait to study and learn. And those will indicate what your values are more than a social idealism that you think you're going to do that you don't live by. I'm not interested in what you say you want to do. I'm interested in what you're doing. Because if you set goals and you set priorities and you set objectives and intentions and attentions in the direction of what's truly highest on your value, you will excel. You will awaken up your power. You'll waken up your leadership. You'll wake up your genius. You'll expand your space and time horizons. You'll give yourself permission to do more. You'll have more certainty and belief in yourself and confidence. And you'll automatically live with eustress and adaptability and resiliency instead of distress and phobias. See, when you're living by your highest values, you wake up the forebrain, the executive center, and you end up becoming a master of your destiny. But that's the real core values, the real true core values, not the stuff that I see on the literature out there. It's like Paul Dirac, the Nobel Prize winner, said, it's not that we don't know so much, we know so much that isn't so. It's about unlearning half the stuff that we've been taught out there. I've been involved in the personal development industry, and there's a lot of stuff out there that's just fluffy stuff. I'm not interested. I almost have to debunk it because it's distracting to real mastery in life. But finding out what you really are demonstrating as a real commitment in life and structuring your life according to that makes a huge difference in your life, because then you'll walk your talk. You won't limp your life. Then you'll do what you say. And integrity is living congruently with what you really value. It's not an artificial thing. You say, okay, I'm going to live by integrity. I'm going to live with honesty. I've never met an honest person. Diogenes at the time of Socrates and Plato, he never went all over Europe trying to find an honest person, living honest all the time. And all of our opinions and all of our perceptions are mostly skewed and not really always honest. So we can say we want to be honest, but really the most important place to be honest is with yourself about what's really important to you. And then instead of because if you're not living by your highest values, if you're not fulfilling what's most meaningful, if you're not prioritizing your life and living with what's really important to you, you're going to have unfulfillment. And as you go into unfulfillment, your blood glucose and oxygen goes into the amygdala, subcortical area of the brain, which is the animal survival mode. And it takes you back, Kohlberg's idea of avoid pain and seek pleasure. You literally regress. If you're not living by priority according to what you really value, you regress down Kohlberg's ideas back to avoid pain, seek pleasure, and back to primitive survival mechanisms of pleasing parents and fitting into society. And that's where conformists, Ernest Becker in his Denial of Death had a beautiful text on this. It's worth reading if you get a chance, The Denial of Death, or go online and look at the video on conformity concerning this, because it'll shock you. Because most people subordinate and fit in like that and create a collective heroism and thinking they're going to be a good little citizen fitting in, and then they're going to have Bonnie Ware's regrets at the end of their life. Gee, by now I thought I'd be, and oh, I could have done this. But if you're actually an unborrowed visionary going after what's truly important to you and prioritizing your life and doing it in a way that serves people, that you're remunerated and compensated so you can delegate lower priority things, you can enhance and empower your life. Now, when you're not living by your highest values and you're subordinating to everybody else and trying to fit in, which I think everybody here has had a moment when you've been infatuated with somebody and sacrificed what was important to you to be with them. Well, imagine that collectively and all the people around you, and you're sacrificing your life away. That's called a lost soul in theology. But when you're doing that, you activate the amygdala. The amygdala is wanting to avoid pain and seek pleasure, and it creates a subjective bias mechanism as a survival mechanism to try to accentuate, to capture prey and to avoid predator. So it literally skews and distorts and causes broad generalizations like all good, all bad, and absolute belief systems. And this is where absolute morality comes in, which nobody can live by, but everybody hypocritically thinks they're going to. And they point their finger and they got three fingers passed back at them. When you do that, if you're seeking this pleasure and you're trying to avoid pain, you're living in fear. And if you're trying to avoid this pain and seek pleasure, you're living in fear. The fear of loss of that which you seek and the fear of gain of that which you avoid is where all the phobias come from. So anytime you're not living by your highest values, you're going to be trapped in phobias. And in the phobias themselves, that's where you have the fear of not being smart enough, fear of not being succeeding, the fear of failure, the fear of not making enough money, or fear you're going to lose money, the fear of losing the respect of loved ones or the people you respect that you're intimate with, the fear of rejection by people in society, the fear of ill health, death, or disease, or not being attractive enough for procreation, and the fear of breaking the morals and ethics of some spiritual authority you've given power to. All of these fears are a byproduct of not living by highest values, because you subordinated to the collective authority, injected the values of somebody you don't even know where they come from half the time, these ideals. I have an exercise in one of my programs where I actually identify when people say I should, I ought to, I supposed to, I got to, and we trace where that originates and what individual that originates or what group that originates from. And then they realize, oh, because when people come up to you and say, well, you should do this, I go, I should? According to who? I love it when people try to project their idea about how I should, and they're not knowing how to respect my values. They just project onto me what I should do. You've seen salespeople do that. You should be buying this product. It will help you. And I go, well, I should. According to who? According to when? Where? And people then go, oh, I don't even know. They're not even aware of where they get it themselves. They're just passing down and parroting a collective authority that has maybe no basis in any personal reality for the individual, but giving yourself permission to stand strong and identify what's really valuable to you, and then master the skill of communicating whatever that is in terms of other people's values. I've not seen two values that can't be linked. Even complementary opposite values can be linked, and you can still respect and communicate what's important to you in terms of what's important to other people. That doesn't mean you have to sacrifice and live by duty. It just means you want to inspire and communicate effectively in the art of communication with others. I love teaching people how to do that, because when they do, they go, whoa, my relationship just shifted. And my kid has just changed. Instead of autocratically projecting a value on them and thinking what they should be doing, or you trying to live in their values and what you should be doing, you're now respecting each other for their own individual values, because no two people have the same set of values. If you're looking for somebody with exactly your set of values, you'll be living in the twilight zone. And you might want to look what that does up if you're young. But the Twilight Zone was a show that was kind of a spoof on some of the delusions that people live by in their life. But what happens is we automatically, we are more fulfilled if we can live congruently and aligned with what we value most. And we're more fulfilled when we can articulate that in a way that's also helping others fulfill what their values are, their highest values. That way people can be loved and appreciated for who they are. We all want to be loved and appreciated for who we are, but who we are is our highest value. If you take a young woman who's 35 years old and has 3 kids under the age of 5, and her highest value is raising that beautiful family and being a mother, and you ask her, who are you? She'll ontologically give the essence of her being as a mother. If you ask me that, I'd say I'm a teacher. whatever your highest value, your life and identity revolves around it. I've gone through that with well over 100,000 people, and that's what you'll find. Go prove it to yourself. Go determine your values online and be honest with the answers. Do it a few times, see the pattern to it. And if there's not a pattern there, you're lying. If there's a pattern in it and it repeats itself, you know you're on track. But if it's scattered all over the place, that means you're subordinating to a whole bunch of opinions. But if you actually go in there and identify it, you will see very clearly that your ontological identity, the essence of your being, is an expression of what you value most. And your epistemological yearning to learn is spontaneously in your highest value. And your teleological meaning and purpose is derived from your highest value. So if you wonder why I spend so much time on that, it's because the very core drive of mastery in human behavior is that. That's why I wherever I go, almost every talk I do, you're going to hear me talk about it. I've been studying it 48 years, and that distilled it down to that essence. And if you don't find out what that is and you keep trying to be somebody you're not, you're going to bang your head against the wall, be back in your amygdala, live in the 7 fears, the fears I've said that I mentioned. And believe it, the moment you're in your amygdala and you're living in your fear, you're going to be distracted by impulses and instincts. The desire for that which is unobtainable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable, which is the source of the passionate suffering that people have, instead of an inspired mission. I'm interested in helping people inspire their mission. In the breakthrough experience, which I've been teaching 32 years, I'm interested in helping people get past their amygdalas, out of their animal nature, and get into their angelic and real human nature where they're inspired, where they're really having a vision, where they really have a desire to make a difference as a unique individual expressing it without having to fit in, to be able to be yourself. You want to be your love for who you are, but if you can't fit in, and every time you're proud, looking down on people, that's not who you are. Every time you're humiliated and looking up at people and minimizing yourself, that's not who you are. It's when you are yourself and you're communicating effectively with somebody else who's themselves, that both individuals have create a sustainable, transactional, fair exchange. And that's what allows perpetuity of the relationship and in your own life fulfillment. So unless you have equanimity within yourself and equity between yourself and others, living congruently by what you value most, don't expect a fulfilled life. Fulfillment is fulfilling the highest values. That's what fulfillment means, filling full the mind. And that's what we want to import into our mind and awareness the most. That's why the young lady who has the 3 children goes to the mall and she spots children's items in the mall. She'll filter it out of the mall. She'll then make a decision and she'll buy it and take action on it. Whatever's highest on our value is where we're disciplined, reliable, and focused and inspired. And whatever's low in our values, we procrastinate, hesitate, frustrate. You tell me, what do you want? A disciplined, reliable, and focused life that's inspired and leads and basically blazes a new trail and goes after what inspired, kind of like an Elon Musk going off to Mars, if you will? Or do you want to be sitting in mediocrity and trying to fit in and waiting to see what you should be like and fitting in and being punished if you don't fit that? And rewarded if you do, and the reward is a little carrot thinking in some afterlife construct. No, that's not an empowered life. So living by your highest values and making sure that you're actually concentrating and focusing on that is what the breakthrough experience is about. All my programs are about, what this message here today is about. Your core value, the true core values, is your highest values. Top 3 values of what I call them. But they're not truth and honesty and integrity and stuff. What is true is when you're true to the answers and look at what it actually is, you may find out that your highest value is becoming a great gymnast and get an Olympic medal in gym. You may find your highest value, like me, is teaching and researching and traveling the world. You may find somebody else is raising a family and somebody else is running a major business and somebody else is about building wealth and somebody else is made into social causes. There's no right or wrong value system. There's none you're supposed to have. It's what's true to you and what is really inspiring to you that serves other people. And that's the thing. And finding out what's really meaningful to you so you can't wait to get up in the morning and be and do and have that. And then doing it in a way that actually serves people. So there's a fulfillment, because there's no fulfillment if you're just receiving without giving. You know, you have a sensory cortex and a motor cortex. A motor cortex is for service and the sensory cortex is for the receiving of rewards. And so you want both. You want to be able to receive the rewards, helping other people get what they want to get in life by you getting what you want to get in life. That's not by conforming and subordinating, because you're not going to make a contribution to them. The contribution comes from your uniqueness. I'd rather be number one at being me than number two at being somebody else. So if you follow what's really high on your values, come to the breakthrough experience and let me help show you how to do that, or come online, go online and do the value determination, or do both. But making sure that you are prioritizing your life and filling your day with truly high priority things is going to increase the probability of you activating your true core values and transcending the major fears that hold people back. Again, the fear of breaking the morals and ethics of some spiritual authority, the fear of failure, the fear of not knowing enough, the fear of not making enough money or losing money, the fear of rejection, the fear of loss of loved ones, the fear of somehow physical ailments. But all of the symptoms of our body and all 7 of those areas of our life are offering us feedback to let us know whenever we get symptoms in any of those areas and are not having fulfillment in those areas, because we're not living authentically, congruently with what our core highest values are. So when you go read about the core values in the literature, beware of the social idealisms. Go watch the Ernest Becker's work on conformity online. You'll find a little YouTube conformity. And please come to the breakthrough experience, because I can actually show you exactly what to do, the actual steps on how to transform that and give yourself permission to be an authentic, unborrowed, visionary individual who's a leader, being who they really want to be. I'm a firm believer that if you want to sit there and conform, that's fine. But if you want to norm yourself and expand yourself and give yourself permission to do something amazing in the world, be or extraordinary versus ordinary, then you want to make sure you know what the real core values are, not the social idealisms. You won't live in fear, you'll live in inspiration. Fear is a feedback to let you know that you're pursuing fantasies that aren't you, and it's going to do what it can to get you back to being the authentic you. And the magnificence of who you are is far greater than all those fantasies you might impose on yourself. So I just wanted to take some time today to go over that idea of what a core value is versus social idealism, a real core value, instead of what's being taught out there. And then also understand that that's the source. Not living congruently with what's really important to you is the very source of all the phobias and fears that you end up in your life on. So please let me help you get from living by somebody else's world and by duty into design. That's why I help people in master planning live by design, not by duty. And to help you do that and to help you expand your game, I want to take a moment to give you a gift. Each time I do this week, I usually give a gift, and this is one of the most commonly appreciated gifts. This is a Awakening Your Astronomical Vision. This is a live presentation I did at Johannesburg in a planetarium based on the topic Astronomical Vision. And I basically showed people how to get past small thinking and allow themselves to do something globally. If you want to make a difference in yourself, you need a vision as big as your community or family, at least. If you want to make a difference in your family, you need a vision as big as your community. If you want to make a difference in your community, you need a vision as big as your city. If you want to make a difference in the city, be number one in the city, a leader in the city, you need a vision as big as your state or province. If you want to be number one in the state, you need a vision as big as your nation. If you want to be number one in the nation, you need a vision as big as the globe. And if you want to have a global impact, you need an astronomical vision. And so this CD, this live 1.5 to 2 hour CD, I am absolutely certain if you listen to it, which most people do 4, 5, or 6 times even, is going to help you expand the game. Now, with the internet, all of us have the access to the whole world. I've always said the universe is my playground, the world is my home, every country is a room in the house, every city is a platform to share my heart and soul. And I'm a believer that deep inside you, you're more of a celestial being having a terrestrial experience than a terrestrial being looking out at the celestial experience. I'm going to show you how to have a bigger vision, a broader vision, so you, instead of seeing things black and white, either good or evil and either black or white, where you're trapped and living in fears, to neither. So you're actually unconditionally loving your life and being inspired by your life. That's what this CD will help you do, and help you have an advantage in business and finances and leadership in your life. So just wanted to pass that on. Take advantage of it. Go to demartini.fm/gift. Take advantage. It's normally $50. It's a gift to you. Watch it, or listen to it, and listen to it, and listen to it. I promise you it'll be some gems in there. And thank you again for listening to me today. I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, have a fantastic weekend and live by priority. Go online, do the value determination process, take advantage of that, and start living by priority. If you fill your day with high priority actions inspire you, your day won't fill up with low priority distractions that don't. Till next time, thank you.